You bring me this idea when the time is right. I'm not going to use my thinking mind to figure this out.
When it isn't time to act yet, you do just sit there, because if it isn't time yet, no matter what you try, it will not come together.
Rule number 1, rule number 10, rule number 100, do not force anything.
So when I was trying to only make decisions from the mind, it was very conflictual. So you're just with the body, with the body, with the body. And then finally, a place came and it was right. It means on the cosmic level, it's all good. But on the personal level, you may have to really speak up or act in ways that are outside your comfort zone and tell the truth.
Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation. If you've ever wanted more peace, security, and guidance in your life, then do we have the Divine Abundance show for you. Today I'll be talking with Tosha Silver, the Queen of Serenity and Surrender, about her latest masterpiece, the Divine Abundance Oracle Cards. That's just what I want to talk with her about today, about how to get guidance from the divine, even in life's most challenging moments. That, plus we'll talk about radical acceptance, love taking the heck over, what on earth is aparagriha, and why in the world God is not your vending machine. So welcome back to the show, Tosha. Are you ready to shine?
Well, I'm ready to really love that beautiful bird that you have in your lap.
This is Ruru.
He's amazing.
So Ruru came to us after we went to watch a sunset last summer, day before a big forest fire started in Colorado, and we, quote, missed the sunset. And I turned to my wife, Jessica, and I said, everything happens for a reason. We head down the hill in our car. We see a chicken in distress running across the road. And I said, with your permission, we're about to find out why the chicken crosses the road.
Yeah.
And the ultimate act of surrender has been for us, two near lifelong meditators, to have 140 decibel king-size rooster in our lives who guides everything. There are places you go, places you can't go, places you can live, places you can't live, all guided by the divine through a divine-sized rooster.
Well, and if you think about it, I'm sure you guys have thought about this, but what is a rooster but a symbol of awakening, since that's what they do every day to get everybody else to wake up out of their trance state. So it's sort of perfect, right?
It is sort of perfect. That's a great way to put it. We have the greatest blessing in our lives has been daylight savings time, because he doesn't have a rooster watch. He goes by light, which means that he started getting up an hour later relative to the clock when daylight savings hit. And I'm not about to tell him otherwise. What have you learned about surrender over this interesting year of 2020, 2021?
Well, I think that everything that preceded 2020 and 2021, like maybe the last 7 years, has prepared for this. And so I've been kind of looking at it like, thank God I ended up on this wild road of somewhere along the way deciding I wanted to surrender to something greater than the ego's machinations. So in a way, it's been more of the same. Let's put it that way. But I think also that the feeling of, surrender is not passivity, right? And I think it's like the way that it really gets mistaken, that, oh, well, you just lay there and hope things work out. And I think particularly once 2021 kicked in, it's pushing so many people into its action time. I mean, it isn't time to just sit there and contemplate. They're really having those feelings of like, oh, wow, it's time to move, or it's time to act, or it's time to get a new pet rooster, or whatever it is. And that energy of acting from a place of surrender is not talked about that often.
Let's dive in there because this is huge. This is somewhere I did want to go today, which is, well, I think of your business and you have an amazing business and you reach people worldwide. So it is not about, well, Tosha just surrenders and goes and hangs out on the couch and have some bonbons. There is some serious action involved.
Yeah. But I think that the way surrender, well, first of all, and this is, part of one way or another, the way it always works out. Surrender starts with offering so that you're doing that sense that whatever actions are about to transpire actually do not belong to you. So you have a problem. In fact, I'll use the example that I'm getting ready to move over the next couple of months. So my boyfriend and I are moving to the East Coast. And every step of that had become, you offer it, the right place will be shown, the right actions will be shown. When it isn't time to act yet, you do just sit there, because if it isn't time yet, no matter what you try, it will not come together. But then when it's time to act, the actions are guided. And the last thing I would say about that is that the attachment to the outcome, it goes away, because you're like going, all right, now that it's offered and now that the right actions have been shown, even if what comes back brings its own challenges, that's still what needs to happen because the entire thing has been offered.
I really love that, and I particularly love that you're sharing about the move, because we're moving into a life-size RV, a 44-foot vehicle transported by a truck with a full rolling studio on it, and we're moving
Wait,
into
didn't
that.
you guys just do this? Weren't you guys in a?
We were in an RV, a
'Cause I
35-foot
follow
RV last year,
you. That's what I thought. Yeah.
and that was harrowing at best. There's fires outside our door, there's COVID, and we had to leave Colorado, and that was really difficult. We got here, we're in a retreat center by Joshua Tree. It's been magnificent. But we're listening and hearing the call that we get to move. And we're going, as part of our move, into a rolling mobile studio home setup. And it has required listening at the highest level so that we know when to step forward, when to step back. Watching the doors that close, to me, that's actually more important than the doors that open.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And then rule number 1, rule number 10, rule number 100, do not force anything.
Anything. Exactly. Which at the same time is not to be confused with passivity, because sometimes people will say, well, I tried to do that and I felt like I was stopped, so I just gave up and decided it was the wrong direction. And that doesn't always mean that. It can mean that in 2 months, it's the right direction, or an adjustment happens. So it's like you're in this dance all the time with the Shakti, right?
How do you communicate? And I love that you say that, because Shakti visited me in a dream years ago. How do you communicate with the divine? You're doing this dance. You're going, I give it up. I surrender it. I offer it to you. It ain't mine. If you want this to come about, I need your assistance. And go into a place of listening so that you can hear clearly. Like, I've got our book, Automatic Writing, behind us. We just came out with this year as a tool to listen. How do you do that personally?
Well, I think people are different depending on how they get information, and I'm really kinesthetic. So, and I've also found that for some people, this act of listening as if they're going to hear words can cause an enormous amount of delusion, because they're like, oh, I think I heard to move to Croatia. And they get to Croatia and they're like, that wasn't what I heard. So if you can hear that way, then that's terrific. But for other people might be more like me. It happens through the body, and I'll feel the tug. I'll feel literally the pulls. Call this person. Don't do this, do this. And it's happening like an animating force inside of the body. When you just get that feeling of like a leap. It's called a spanda in Sanskrit. There's literally an inner leap.
Let's dive into the inner leap, because I want to go to another obscuration, another confusion here, which is to take that leap, that inner leap. There may still be fear, but that does not mean you're not being pulled or called forward.
Absolutely. And that's actually why I like listening to the body more than for myself, the mind, because the mind, I have Libra rising. The mind could have all kinds of contradictory opinions can be happening because you can always see both sides of the story. So when I was trying to only make decisions from the mind, it was very conflictual. The body, to me, once it's been offered, it's almost like the opinion of the mind becomes secondary. So, for example, with this move that is about to happen, my mind has all kinds of opinions about it. Tosha, what are you doing? You've been living in California for 30 years. You love it, blah, blah, blah. And yet the body is very, very calm, knowing it's the right thing. And on another day, the mind is very excited to go. But I just find that the mind is the nature of the mind with its endless shifting opinions. So when the action of offering occurs, whether it's do I make this move, do I take this job, do I start this relationship, whatever it is, once the act of offering has occurred, then I think the information comes to you however you are able to receive it. And so if it's kinesthetically like me, if it's more verbal like you, it really doesn't matter. You just start to get attuned to that.
Thank you. I have this huge beaming ear-to-ear grin because right now the RV is taking us back on the road. Is it settling in Montana, or is it where Jessica is feeling pulled to Vermont or Florida? I have no idea. My guess is it may be Vermont or Florida. And so I'm in the parallel mirror path of you, as I always hear, go westward, young man, and now to be going east. What was your act of offering? Would you mind walking us through this? What did you say or do? And then how have you been, let's say the mind kicks up, how are you getting back to that place of love?
Well, for me, I think, what happens okay, there's this part of It's Not Your Money, the last book that I did. There's this part of it in the second half where it talks about the 3 levels of offering. And the first level of offering is no offering, where you're basically just saying, I want what I want. You better bring it. I'm trying to manifest it. If you don't bring it, I'm going to be pissed. The level 2 is where intellectually it's starting to sound like a good idea. Like, oh, I'm in a lot of pain. I think I want to start calling in something greater than my ego to run things. But the truth is, I still want what I want. Then you get to level 3. And when you're at level 3, you're just exhausted. You're either exhausted or you're evolved, who knows which, or both. But something happens. Something starts to take over, and you no longer have an agenda. You're just literally saying, I'm truly open from the deepest level to wherever the highest path is meant to go, wherever I can be of the greatest use, however you want to say it. So what I found, we might as well, since we're both in the middle of moves, we might as well talk about the move. For me, with the move in the beginning, because it took about 1.5 years for it to really unfold. In the beginning, there were all kinds of opinions in the mind, because that's what we do as humans. But then it became, okay, I'm really deeply offering this to be shown the highest outcome and the right place. And all these different options kept coming and coming and coming, but I kept waiting for that inner leap, that sponda, because the mind was like, oh, well, maybe you should take this. And then you get all the shoulds from other people, right? Oh, you should do this, you should do that, but it doesn't feel right. So you're just with the body, with the body, with the body. And then finally a place came and it was right. And we took it, but the process took about 1.5 years because it just wasn't time yet.
Where are you going?
Going into upstate New York.
Very, very cool. I got to ask whereabouts, because we've looked everywhere and tried to feel into this as well.
Yeah, around in the Hudson Valley.
Very, very cool.
Yeah.
So that was a place that we played many years ago when we started the show. We would go into the Hudson Valley and commune. Actually, there are some. I'm an animal guy, and so there's endangered timber rattlesnakes that would come out to play and do kundalini embraces in front of us and go up trees and come down and just gaze with us. And you're gonna love it. We were offered a few months ago, and we're under contract now to figure this out, a TV show.
Oh, uh-huh.
And They said, so what do you want to make? And let's work on this together. I don't know.
Right.
I have given it to the divine
Right.
and said, you bring me this idea when the time is right. I'm not going to use my thinking mind to figure this out.
Exactly. Exactly. And guaranteed it will be so much more interesting by doing it that way. That's for me, it's always there are these surprises that only have room to come in once I let go of the agenda of what I think should be occurring. So,
Woohoo!
yeah.
What does it mean then to give it up to love?
I think it means really what we're talking about. You know, I was thinking about this morning. You and I were writing back and forth, and I said, I want to tell you a funny story about making the card deck. And it's sort of about this. When Hay House came out with this Divine Abundance card deck, the art, I wish I had a deck to show you, but
So I've got one here, and we can throw one up on the screen as well.
Just so that people can see it. There you go. The art is really beautiful because this woman,
stunning.
It's stunning, right? This woman, Fernanda Gonzalez, made the art, and it's really gorgeous. And so anyway, when the deck when it came out, I was looking at all the art, and it has all the quotes from It's Not Your Money, and it's just really a great deck. And all of a sudden we realized that that looks good. We realized that one card, it was supposed to be a 52 card deck, and that one card was missing. So we had to go back to the publisher and go, where did the 52nd card go? And they scrambled around, and they were like, oh my God, one card was left out. We're going to have to go back and have one card printed so that it could be added to everybody's deck later. So guess which card was left out?
I am so curious to know which card was left out and who caught it. So
Yeah.
You're saying love was left out?
No, love wasn't left out, but the card acceptance was left out. And so what became really funny about this was that when I think that Fernanda was actually the person who discovered that the card was missing, the artist herself. And when I heard about it, there was this part of me, it was funny, but there was also the fiery part of me that was annoyed, right? I'm like, oh my God, we worked so hard on this deck and one card was left out. And then I was like, wait a minute, it's the acceptance card, right? Like, what could be crazier? So, to me, there's a paradox, because some of what I think we're talking about is going into that place of radical acceptance. However, there's another side to it, which to me is that radical acceptance does not always mean passivity. So the second part of that story is that publisher came forward. They've now reprinted the missing card of acceptance. And there were still problems getting the card out to everybody who bought the deck. And so because of that, I now had to get in there with the publishing house and fight for the deck and say, this needs to happen. You need to get people the missing cards. I just love the irony of all of this, because acceptance didn't mean that I just sit there and meditate and go, whoever's meant to find that missing card will. It was like, no, it actually meant I had to step up and say, no, you actually have to mail the missing card to every person who paid for a full deck. And that used to be really hard for me, to have to stand in that truth and push back, because I used to think earlier in this process that acceptance, surrender just meant it's all good. It doesn't always mean that. It means on the cosmic level, it's all good, but on the personal level, you may have to really speak up or act in ways that are outside your comfort zone and tell the truth. And that's part of acceptance and surrender too.
Wow. Thank you. There's like 3 different questions I'm going to ask based on that. First off, that was the first card that I pulled.
Really?
From your deck was acceptance. Yes.
Oh my God, that's fabulous.
So with that said, Yeah, we'll go a couple different directions with this. There's a term that came up when I was going through your deck today and going on your Facebook page and looking into where you're at right now, which is fierce voice. There is acceptance does not mean that you don't, that you stuff down the fiery side, that you do not bring the goddess Shakti out, that you do not voice up. What can you tell me about that?
I just think what you said is absolutely right on. And to me, it's kind of an embodiment of the ferocious divine feminine that really everybody has, regardless of gender. To me, it's really not just about women, because there can be men that very much are also in touch with the sacredness of that divine feminine. But that energy of, again, to me, the divine feminine has kind of been mistaken as just, oh, she's the moonlight and you're just yin and you're just receiving. And it's like, holy God, just go check out Kali. Check out Kali. Check out Durga. Check out all the ladies that ride on the tigers and the lions. And, check out Eris, who is currently very strong in the sky. There are these embodiments of the divine feminine that are ferocious. And they are love. They are a form of love that isn't really talked about much in this culture.
Tell me more.
Well, I think that is the time that we're in right now, because just to throw a little astrology in this, Eris in the sky is now throughout 2020 and 2021. She's making a square to Pluto, the god of death and rebirth. And Pluto is the planet that, to me, is very connected to Kali. So these two goddesses are really dancing with each other. And because it takes 550 years for Eris to make a circle around the zodiac, it's unusual that we're alive right now for this. And so to me, it really is the waking up of that ferocious divine feminine. And whether you see that through, when the Me Too movement started to emerge in 2018, or whether you see it now with some of the appointments that Biden's doing, where women are coming into, and people of color are coming into the administration, that to me, this is all like the inclusivity of bringing in the people whose voices have been left out, and specifically women.
Woohoo!
Yeah, no, it's exciting to be alive for that.
It's huge. It's huge. Let's take that as an internal journey. Particularly people who have been listening to this show are empathic. They're more sensitive. In fact, I had Anita Morjani on recently. Sensitive is the new strong. And because of that, many of us have a hard time, many of the listeners have a hard time with this balance of passivity and fierceness, and knowing how to discern. How do we do that?
Well, one thing I can say is that there's I don't usually promote this way, but there's a course on my website called The Holy Battle. And there's a course called The Holy Battle, and it's actually about what you just said. And it's actually, how do you tap that ferocious energy on the inside and allow it to do the speaking through you? So that's one thing I would say is this: if you have a lot, especially if you have a lot of Pisces in your chart, or a lot of Libra, or a lot of Cancer, and you tend to be that empathic energy that's always, you don't want to necessarily rock the boat, you don't want to upset people, you tend to be sensitive and flowing, but you're missing that power that lets you stand in your truth. That course is really good for that. But I would say the way that it happens is by, in part, this has been my own process, inviting it, and I think that anybody can build a relationship to that inner ferocious divine through invitation. It's like getting to know a deep, secret, hidden part that the culture, especially with women, has said, be nice, tamp down, that's bad. And then you start tapping it and you're like, there's nothing scary about this. It's just an aspect of yourself that's been dying to come out.
And my guess is, if we challenge most people anyway, there is a rare exception to every rule. Most people who are on this spectrum to bring out that inner strength, to bring out that inner fierceness, to bring out a little bit of the Kali inside of them. While they're afraid they're going to go way too far, it's probably just not possible.
Yes, that's true. And I think also, the issue that comes up in all of this is doership. It's where we started this whole conversation. If you're inviting this force of fierceness and truth to speak through you, to act through you, then you're not really dealing with, oh, what if I do it wrong? What if I do it right? What if it's too much? You're really just in the state of saying, act through me, talk through me. I mean, it just happened when I had to make the call to my publisher. It was like, I didn't want to do that. I have Libra rising. I don't like having to make waves about anything, believe it or not. And then there I was on the phone going, every person needs this card who bought the deck. So something else starts to have permission to speak through that I think for some of us has been silenced growing up, but not killed. That's what's amazing is, when they talk about that little, the flame that isn't put out, that little simmering flame, you still have it inside.
For myself, more and more, this has been such a special year of connecting on a deeper level. I say I go to the angels, but call it spirit, angels, inner wisdom, whatever, going deeper still. And so if I was to pick up the phone, I'm going to be going, Archangel Michael, Raphael, Gabriel, higher self, higher team, everybody help me for my highest good of all, or something even better. What do you do in that moment? Is there something that you're more kinesthetic? Is there something you do feel express to remind you, let's bring it back to the divine first. Okay, pick up the phone. It's go time.
I honestly, sometimes I'll just breathe a few times. I'll do like a few moments of deep breathing. But the main thing I do is I will say, this is yours. Take over entirely. Release me from the prison of fear and let me do what's needed. Show me the right actions. Get me out of the way. That's honestly one of the biggest prayers I use. Get me out of the way. And it's astonishing because you find yourself doing things going, I didn't expect to do that, but it all worked out. Or you even are wondering who exactly did that through me. So I think that that's available to anybody with practice.
Thank you. Would you say, get me out of the way? We're going to double back to that. Would you say, I love to use the term cosmic setup.
Yeah.
That everything is happening, not just for our highest good, but for our growth, for our expansion, for us to step into ourselves, for yourself to say, I'm Libra rising. Boy, am I being called forward in this one. Are these cosmic setups?
Yeah. I mean, I think that the only reason that I hesitate a bit with that is that sometimes I hear people say that about things in this world that are horribly unjust and terrible. A woman gets raped and then somebody says, that was a setup. You called that in. And I'm like, wait a minute. You're living in a culture of misogyny and violence. So it doesn't work. It only works as part of the larger paradox. But I would agree on one side of the equation, yes, at every moment, we're endlessly getting the curriculum of the soul to go ever more into love and truth and power. And we also live in an insane culture.
So true on all accounts. We won't even go into the full insanity. I'm going to go to the other word that you used. Because we're talking paradox today, and I'm loving this conversation, Tosha, because we're talking surrender and we're talking fierceness and we're talking it's not mine, I let it go, and we're talking power. What is power and how do those fit together?
I think that only these topics can only be understood through the idea of paradox, and that too often especially in spiritual communities, you get people either fixating on one end of it, which is surrender, and it all just means like passive bliss and saying yes to everything, even if the thing you're saying yes to is horribly destructive, or it means power, 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 going and getting it all and doing it all and forcing it. And instead, you're like the still point in the center, holding both ends and inviting love to do the doing through you. And sometimes what somebody says is to me is they'll say, how do I know? How do I know if I'm out of the way? And I usually, for myself, it's when there's detachment about the outcome. And it doesn't mean I don't have preferences, but when there's detachment about the outcome, you're basically out of the way, even if the mind, of course, has preferences.
I know a lot of people who've read your work. I have had so many beautiful questions come in. How do we, people who oftentimes we confuse surrender with letting go of preferences or even feeling guilty
Absolutely.
for having our preferences.
Right, exactly. And that's, again, to me, the loss of paradox, because the surrender is the intentional attunement with something greater than the ego. At the same time, we're in human bodies. So of course there's preferences. And so it's, to me, it's almost painful to watch the gyrations that people go through sometimes of spanking themselves and blaming themselves for having preferences or even attachments. That just comes with being human. But I think that the part of the paradox that's very powerful is allowing those to exist and then offering them. Like, that's to me the beauty of offering. You're not saying I'm bad because I would prefer to live somewhere with a mountain view. You're not bad. Who knows how many lifetimes you may have lived somewhere with a mountain view, and there's an encoding in the soul that's longing for that. And because it's been offered to the divine, you start to just trust on this instinctive level that what's right is going to come next. So either the right place with a mountain view is going to come, or you'll have something to learn by not having that, about releasing the attachment to it having to go that way.
Thank you. Let's dive even more, not into the mountain view. God, I love a mountain view. But
I think I keep seeing your view from the thing, so it's making me think of it.
We always like to be up on high. In fact, when I first learned automatic writing, the first thing that came through is you're going to be up on a mountain on high, speaking before thousands and millions of people, in which I thought it was my ego. And then years later, I only attempted again, thought it was ego, then had a past life regression, and it did the same. And I'm like, okay, I get it. I give. And now that's what we do. But on that beautiful note, let's hold another paradox here about, how would we call it? Oh, I have no other way to put it. Free will versus destiny.
I mean, it's, believe it or not, I don't focus on it that much, because to me, if all actions are offered to the divine all day long, day in and day out, and you're constantly saying, take this over, take this problem over, allow the highest outcome to come, give me the actions, give me the courage to take the actions. Who cares about free will versus destiny? Do you see what I mean? I'm not dismissing the question. I'm just saying, in my own process, that question used to really torture me. Maybe 20 years ago, I was like, well, was I meant to meet that person? And what if I wasn't meant to meet them? This is all just a mental game over and over and over. The mind started to quiet down, and it started to just be able to feel it going, who cares? The right next action is this. And it started to become, the flow is in the now. And if you're in the now, always inviting in the right next action, the destiny is going to take care of itself.
I'm going to play with this for one more question.
Yeah.
Forgive me,
Yeah.
Tosha.
No, I don't care.
The question I have up on the screen, and I'm trying to make it flow better, trying to understand, and this is certainly a tongue-in-cheek question because my whole everything is to get in this flow. I want to be on the raft with the divine. You take the ship. I'll do some fierce work. But if we're not in charge, why are we even here? And I almost want to say, forgive me for asking this
No,
question.
I don't care. I mean, that's a perfectly good question. Again, it's a paradox to me. Like, I honestly think sometimes that I must have been Indian in another life because it's a culture that understands paradox, and Westerners don't think about paradox. They just think in black and white. We're either powerless or we're, making everything happen and we're rock stars. And instead, those two things are dancing together all the time. So I believe that through the actions of offering and surrender, you're constantly making yourself available for something to move through and animate and act through us. The same way that a tree does. It doesn't make you special. It just starts making you more like a tree or a flower or a rooster. Like when Einstein said something like people should think less and become more like animals. Did you ever know that he said that? And
No, I'm going to go Google this as soon as we're done.
yeah, and there's some quote from him about that. And I thought, here he is, one of the smartest beings who ever lived. And he was saying that, like, stop being trapped by all of these games that the mind is playing and just tap into this deeper part of yourself, and you will be guided for the right actions to take.
Thank you. And the game that I like to play, if I was to define myself, and I don't want to define because that limits us, but an alchemist, playing with energy, transmutation, and getting in the highest level attunement possible. What you just described, what you're talking about is getting in this flow, getting into this state, is your life force, I'm going to call it,
Right.
goes up. And who wouldn't want that?
Right. Right. And I like that your rooster's getting excited by this conversation because we're saying, like, you should really be more like the animals, and it'll all work out. Well, I was just thinking about how the mind overcomplicates it. And I'm saying this as somebody who really values the mind, but some of this is so much easier to feel in the body than to keep agitating the mind. Like, how the mind won't always know how to hold the paradox, but the body can feel it. Like, there's time to act, there's time to be still. Somebody could say, well, does that mean you should always be still? No, it means there's times to act and there's times to be still. And if you keep inviting the flow to take you over, you will know when it's time to act and when it's time to be still, which doesn't mean I always know. I end up in traffic jams because sometimes I leave the house at a time where it takes me straight into a traffic jam.
It sounds like, though, it's a practice, because when you said whatever you said a minute ago and you started going like this, it's clear, and we've seen people act from this, you're going totally mind at that point. We'll call it mega mind. And we have to learn how to observe ourselves enough to go, where is this coming from?
Yes.
How do we train our bodies? No. How do we step back the aperture to become aware enough to feel this?
Well, I think a little bit of meditation every day helps. I do, because you stop identifying with being the mind. Even if it's just for 10 minutes a day, you're standing back and you're going, wait a minute, there's this machine that's generating all these thoughts, all these reactions, all this stuff, but I am not that machine. I am the holder of it. I'm the witness of it. So I think that helps. But also, for me, there's another piece of this, which is giving the emotions. When we were talking earlier about having permission to have preferences, I think giving the emotions room to be Emotions can be offered to the divine too. And so when somebody says, oh, I'm jealous of that person, or I'm angry at this, and then somebody says, oh, you're spiritual, you shouldn't be those things. I think that's part of the agitation that keeps people out of the flow. If you take all of this as being human and you go, whatever emotion is coming up right now, whether it's fear, worry, anxiety, jealousy, who cares? You're giving it room to be felt, and then it's offered back to the divine. It resolves itself.
Woohoo. Let's go from there. And I'm so glad. The reason I'm woohooing is permission.
Right.
Is because I'm spiritual. I'm not allowed to feel this. I've watched the law of attraction. What you think about, you bring about. So I better be no, you're stuffing it down, man. That's a problem.
Exactly. Yeah, to me, it's such a distortion. This idea that whatever you think or feel, you're going to manifest. I truly think of it as living in hell if you live that way. I have watched people live in hell trying to micromanage every bit of what's happening in their mind and in their bodies so that they don't create. In fact, to me, if it has the inner permission to be felt, if you say, look, I'm a divine being in this crazy human form, all kinds of emotions are going to come through, all kinds of preferences, desires, feelings are going to come through. I'll let them come through, I'll offer them to the divine, and then I come back to peace. You're not in that war all the time with the fluctuations. So yeah, it's an agonizing way to live. I really feel that. I know people find my work sometimes when they come to me and they're like, oh my God, I nearly drove myself insane trying to have a purified mind that never had a bad thought. And, you can literally drive yourself crazy.
And the flip side of that coin is then they blame themselves
Yes.
for everything. And that's not at all. That's not divine love is, well, this happened because that's not what we're talking about at all.
Right. Right.
Let's go from there. Actually, there was one more piece to that. Well, that exhaustion that you mentioned can actually be a beautiful stepping stone to surrender, can't it?
Totally. Totally. I used to have a teacher years ago, like 30 years ago, and he used to say, is it exhaustion or is it evolution? Who cares? And it's true, because whatever gets you there to that place where the grip starts to let go, that you were mentioning aparigraha at the start of this call.
Yes.
And that's the non-grasping, where the hand that's holding on, I'll die if I can't have this or that, the hand starts to open. And I think for some people, there's this thing in the money book. It's called the divine decoy. And it's where the divine keeps bringing something into your life that looks like it's going to be amazing, but it's just a mirage. I mean, that kept happening to us when we were looking for the right next place. We'd find over the course, I'm sure you guys had
whiplash. Well, we've been twice in a row for the right RV, specifically 7 minutes from buying it, and it got yanked away both times. 7 minutes on the nose.
Exactly. And that's, to me, that divine decoy is where you learn aparigraha. Somebody could look at that and they go, oh man, that's a tough luck. You must have really bad karma that you kept missing out on that RV. I wouldn't say that. I would say you're a really ancient soul. Clearly you both are. And you're really here to learn aparigraha, because all old souls are. You're here to learn how to open, receive, and move with the flow. And how the hell can you learn that without having experiences where you have to let go? So yeah, when we were looking for where to go next, there were 3 or 4 places that were like, this is it. This is it. And we'd get down to the almost finish line, and then the whole thing would collapse. And, my boyfriend would be like, what are we doing wrong? And I'm like, what if we're doing everything right? And that was simply not meant for us. It's fine. So
we got to the dealership. We're ready to sign on the dotted line, pull up with the car, had just finished an interview, 90-minute drive away. And I go to pick up my phone to go to speak with the saleswoman. And the phone goes, and look at the text. And it's from 7 minutes earlier. I'm sorry, just sold. And Jessica, my wife, looks at me, and she's flashing back to 10 years ago where I would have just totally fallen apart. And she goes back in time, and she's like, are you going to fall apart? And I'm going to say, no. And I said, no, I'm human. This hurts. I'll process it for a minute, but I know this is exactly as it's supposed to be. And I've allowed it to unravel since then.
That's it. That's it. And I mean, it's really beautiful. The way you're describing that is so beautiful because you weren't trying to force yourself to not have any emotions. And yet at the same time, parigraha starts blooming like a flower. It really does. It's just like a rose that opens. And then you start being in these things and you go, wait a minute. This is to me a place like where destiny comes in. Like if I was meant to have that, nothing could have stopped it. And if I'm not meant to have it, then there's going to be a different route. And you just start to rest in that place of trusting that.
Thank you. And something, I'll share it for our audience another time, but magic has opened up. I had actually a dream about somebody. I cut off somebody's golden locks. They were a dreadlocks guy, and put it on myself. And I'm throwing my head back and forth. When I asked before going to sleep for a dream that would give me guidance. And in my dream, I didn't realize till I woke up, I had golden locks, Goldilocks. Get the exact one you want, and then it appeared. I want to go to your cards for a brief minute, then we'll do a brief meditation. They are so incredibly, I can't do justice to just how beautiful they are. I want to pick one card, and maybe you can share about this with us. Should I ask a question? I guess so. All right. Well, I get to, I believe, buy a truck in the next day or so. A truck. Mr. Tesla gets to buy a truck. What does that mean? What can you tell me, Spirit, about me buying a truck? How's that? To pull this beautiful RV. And I'm going to pull out a card. Should I even show it to myself or just to you in the audience?
Whatever you want.
Well, that's interesting.
That is interesting. Well, first of all, you got Kali on there, which is kind of cool. What does it say?
Energetic clearing. During crisis, the Holy One herself may be emptying you of fear and attachments, preparing you to receive her luminous plan. Oh, boy. I didn't know this was a crisis, but...
Well, who knows? I mean, maybe it'll mean that you think you're going to get one truck, but it's just what we're talking about. A better one comes, or...
I love it. Stay tuned. Where can people go to find your beautiful deck, to find your beautiful book, to find out more, Tosha?
If they go to toshasilver.com, they'll get my website, or all the books and the cards are on Amazon or Biblio, or any of the places that people that buy stuff online can get them all there. And also they can find me on Instagram, where I post most days.
Fantastic. Any words of wisdom you want to share before we go into a little meditation?
I'm just really loving that you and I ended up talking about paradox, because we didn't plan on it ahead. And I just feel like that's the nature of the time right now, is being able to hold those two things, like power, but also surrender, and being still, but also acting when the time is right. And I just think it's a great place to allow for right now.
The truck and the Tesla. I got a riff on that for a second, then we'll go into the meditation. Kindness, that's the word. That's the word that's coming to me. If you can learn how to hold these paradoxes, you're not tearing yourself apart anymore.
That's right. That's right. Sometimes I think, I run this forum online where people can learn this work. In fact, if they go to my website, they'll see the listing for the forum. But I was talking about it on the call that I do there this week, that, for some people, if you talk about self-love, they'll just be like, that's exhausting. I don't even know how to love myself. I've tried, it's too much work. But if you just think about it as affection for yourself, if you just think of it as, like you're saying, kindness, just affection, friendliness, whatever words you want to use that are like that, it becomes so much easier. And so those kind of things of like, you're bad, you manifested that, that can be so easily transformed into, is that what you would say to somebody you loved? You wouldn't do that. So you bring it back in and you're like, everything's offered to the divine. I'm open to receive. The right solution is already selected. The right actions will be guided through me. Think about how much kinder that is as a way to talk to yourself all day than you should have done this or you should have done that or you're bad because this went this way. So
Beyond thank you, because if you do that for yourself, I say that when you see somebody who's not being kind to somebody else, they're being exceptionally, you have no idea what's going on the inside, exceptionally unkind to themselves.
yeah,
And so this changes everything.
yeah.
Everything. This has been my favorite. We've had you on numerous times. This has been my favorite, Tosha. I'm like a kid in a candy store, or you want to hold paradox, the rooster in silence. I'm like a rooster running for his hen. This has been awesome, Tosha.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it also very much.
Thank you. Would you mind leading us in a very short meditation, whatever your calling is?
Sure. I feel like we should do this on this inner kindness. So why don't we do that for a moment?
Beautiful.
So just focusing on your breath. Just breathing in, calming, quieting energy, and breathing out whatever wants to go. And just feel as if on the inside, you sense yourself. You sense this being that is you. And just for a moment, you are pouring affection to you. Just friendly affection. Forget about love for right now. Just friendly affection. You see all the things you've done and the good you've done and the difficult things you've done and the easy things and the hard things and everything you've been through, especially over these last few years. And you're just pouring this affection to yourself. You are enough. You've been doing the best that you can with what you know. You're ready to treat yourself with kindness. You're ready to give friendship to that part on the inside. The war is over. You're just ready to be supportive of yourself. Just pouring that kindness, compassion, loving kindness, metta, to yourself on the inside. And as you do, you can feel it spilling over. It's pouring out of you like a waterfall. There's so much. It's so easy to access it, that it's so easy to pour it out into the world. It pours through you and then out of you. And it surrounds the whole area where you live. This loving kindness pours out. And then it pours through the whole country where you are. And then it simply moves around the planet. It's endless, endless loving kindness and compassion. It encircles the globe. It goes everywhere it's needed, to animals, to people, to nature. Pouring it everywhere. It knows where to go. It knows how to go. The whole planet encircled by your light. and then bringing it back one more time just to you. Pouring it to you, this affection, this kindness, this acceptance, this allowing. You have permission to be you as you are. And slowly coming out as you're ready, as if you're giving yourself your own blessing. You're blessing yourself as you are. You know, I just have to say something.
Yeah.
I really thought about this. Somehow it just passed through my mind as we were just doing that there's all these concepts of what it means to be spiritual. You should be this way. You should be that way. You should always be chill. You should always, be talking in a soft voice, whatever it is. And that when those concepts all go out the window because they don't actually mean anything, then you're left with yourself and that inner affection. So I don't know, somehow that meditation makes me think of that.
I'm going to add to that. It's beautiful. I'm going to add to that because recently somebody bought a whole bunch of property by the house and closed all the trailheads around here.
Whoa.
Yeah, it was a sad day when I came off of the trail, and it was the second time seeing the person. The first time I had said hi with Ruru in my arms. Second time I'm on a mountain bike, and he goes, "This is my property. Promise me you will leave right now and never come back, or I'll have you arrested." And had his phone in his hand.
Wow.
And I said, "I'm a very loving person." I said, "This has brought great joy to everybody. First off, it's a public easement." But I basically told him, I will not make that promise, but I am leaving. Loving, kind, fierce.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Tosha. This has been amazing.
Thank you, Michael. I really enjoy talking with you.
Goes both ways. So for everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun, get the Divine Abundance Oracle cards, and begin turning your life over to love today. And above and beyond all else, shine bright. Woohoo! I just had the Tosha Silver interview. The Tosha Silver interview of interviews that I have wanted to have I'm so excited. The Tosha Silver interview that I have wanted to have with her for years. Heart-opening, heart-touching, kind, and fierce, all held together as one. On that note, if you want to communicate with the divine, if you want to connect with the other side, if you want to find out where am I supposed to do, what's my purpose, my path, my direction, check out the Automatic Writing Experience, a book that we've written with the divine that has a technology in it that allows you step by step, shows you how to communicate with the divine, how to hear from the divine, how to take action from and with the divine. You will literally turn your journaling into channeling. You can get it at automaticwriting.com with tons and tons of bonuses. Of course, you can get it on Amazon. I always recommend, sound bold, but I'll make the ask, 4 copies. Get one for you. It'll change your life. Get a second for a loved one. That way they're not stealing their book. It'll change their life. Get a third one for somebody who is really struggling or has like a dark cloak on them, because whether they're struggling with depression, fear, worry, anxiety, it can help them get lighter as well. And maybe last but not least, the 4th one, give to your local library. The more that you give it away, the more it comes back, and everyone, this is as democratic as it gets, everybody should have direct access to the divine. Again, automaticwriting.com. Now, if you love this video, you can check out another amazing video here. Click that subscribe button below and the bell icon. Be notified of upcoming shows, YouTube premieres, live events every Sunday night with me. Comments, big thumbs up below. Love you guys so, so much. Shine bright. Woohoo! Love you guys.